This week on Quality Digest Live, we'll chat with author Craig Cochran about his new book, The 7 Lessons.
Plus, innovation is always a good thing, right?
Right.
Right? Well, maybe.
Sometimes.
We'll find out why when we come back.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for July 27th, 2012. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
Yes, he is, and I'm Quality Digest publisher Mike Richmond. All right, Dirk, let's get started this week with the top news lines, including the recent release of a thought-provoking book from McGraw-Hill, The New Emerging Market Multinationals. The book was written by a trio of professors, Rajiv Batra, Amitava Chattopadhyay, and Aysegul Osamar. Thank you.
What was that last one?
Yes, Aysegul Osamar. The central idea of the book is that globalization cuts both ways. For decades now, well-established Western multinationals dominated markets in what was once known, of course, as the Third World, emerging markets, right? But now you have thriving, creative, and very aggressive companies in those emerging markets carrying the fight in the other direction, competing very successfully, as it turns out, for business not only on their home turf in those markets, but in North America, and Europe, and Japan as well, in the First World. So it's not about selling stuff at lower prices or being the supplier to private label or original equipment companies in the West anymore, says co-author Batra. These companies are learning to master design, R&D, and focused innovation.
The whole ball of wax.
The whole ball of wax. Innovation is going to be a theme we're going to talk about a lot on the show today. So, how do these companies compete so successfully? The authors identified 4 key elements. 1, producing at the lowest possible costs. Makes sense.
Sure, we know that. Been that way for a while.
Sure. 2, leveraging home market knowledge, what they've learned in those markets, to be nimble and quick, taking that to the bigger markets. 3, customizing niche brands. In other words, being able to serve their customers with exactly what they want when they want it. Again, being nimble, a key advantage they have. And 4th, focused innovation, there's that term again, and smart acquisitions, not just throwing a bunch of money at something just to have it, but really strategically targeting those acquisitions that make the most sense in their overall theme. Now, although these organizations generally can't make splashy promotional moves like sponsoring the Olympics, of course, which is starting today, they're savvy at building their brands through grassroots strategies such as social media, of course, very prevalent. As the forces of globalization accelerate, and worldwide communications grow ever more complex, we're going to continue to see companies quickly emerge, ready to compete on the world stage. So, buckle your seatbelts. The ride's about to get a whole lot faster and probably a little bit bumpier too. So for more information on the new emerging market multinationals, including information on how to order the book, click on the story link just below the player page right there.
Well, it occurs to me also that these emerging companies kind of have an advantage that a lot of our more established companies here don't, is that they know not only our market, because they've been selling to our market and selling low-cost goods and so forth, but they know their market a lot better than we know their market. And that's where I think working with their local audience and niche markets in their area is where they got it all over somebody like us trying to come in from the outside.
Well, and that's what they're saying, leveraging that home market knowledge and carrying that to the broader world, because there's a lot to be learned from having to operate in those markets. That's interesting stuff.
Okay. Also, another interesting story from the Baldrige front. A New York Times article actually recently called A Formula for Cutting Health Costs. In that article, it highlights the 2011 Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award recipient South Central Foundation. This is a healthcare organization, hospital, I believe, and how it has achieved, according to the article, startling efficiencies. So, for instance, emergency room use has been reduced by 50%. Hospitals admissions reduced by 53%, specialty care visits by 65%, and visits to primary care doctors by 36%. So these numbers are pretty amazing, I think, and really a testament to the power of the Baldrige criteria and, of course, the commitment of South Central Foundation's management and staff to implement the criteria. I mean, the Baldrige criteria is very rigorous, but as has really been shown time and again, if you really adhere to it, and if you're a Baldrige winner, you obviously have adhered to it, it really can generate some really striking results. And even now, because you can be audited to the Baldrige criteria, even if you don't apply to the Baldrige, this is a fairly new thing, really is something that companies should really look at doing, because the results of doing it can be pretty fantastic. The New York Times editorial also notes that South Central Foundation, which, by the way, I forgot to mention, is located in Anchorage, Alaska, has clearly saved money, and they've done it without shortchanging their patients.
Yeah.
Patients, for example, are pretty much guaranteed a doctor's appointment on the day they request it. What's that?
Amazing.
Okay, and their calls are usually their calls when you call in are usually answered within 30 seconds.
That's incredible.
This is a hospital, no music
right?
on hold.
Yeah.
It's a hospital. Yeah, I know.
Wow.
Who thought? So some more results according to the editorial and actually the Baldrige report. These are really amazing results, by the way. The percentage of children receiving high quality care for asthma has soared from 35% to 85%.
That's incredible.
This is amazing for asthma kids. We all know kids who have asthma, and the idea that they could really do that is amazing. The percentage of infants receiving needed immunizations by age 2 has risen above 90%. The percentage of diabetics with blood sugar under control ranks in the top 10 percentile of a standard national benchmark. And of course, customer and employee satisfaction rates, as you might imagine, are in the top 90%.
Yeah.
And they really attribute a lot of this to taking the Baldrige principles, the Baldrige criteria, and really ingraining them in as part of the culture of the organization.
We've seen healthcare. I mean, Baldrige, we've seen a lot of healthcare organizations take advantage of the Baldrige criteria lately.
Right.
And it's really been in the past, maybe decade that we've seen this happen. And nowadays, you see actually many, if not most, winners each year are healthcare organizations.
Yeah, there's a lot more. Yeah, there was a big push for that a few years ago.
It's great. It's really great stuff. And it makes complete sense that there'd be so much more employee satisfaction. The employees, especially at a healthcare organization, they want to serve their customers.
Right.
They want to serve those patients. They're in it for the love of that interaction. Of course, they're going to be happier if they do that.
Yeah, and Baldrige is of course so much. A lot of it is, of course, organizational focused and management focused. That I think what happened, particularly in healthcare organizations, like you said, the line workers, the staff workers, essentially, they're there because they want to help you. I mean, that's basically what they do.
Right.
And if management has adopted the mentality, and particularly the mentality that kind of permeates Baldrige, then this really does enable the people on the line to be able to do what they're there for, what they're excited to do.
Good stuff. All right, well, check out that story too. Again, it's below the player page right there. All right, now let's move on to this week's feature articles.
Craig Cochran.
Craig Cochran, that's right. Craig Cochran, of course, is a longtime Quality Digest contributor, and he's a project manager at the Georgia Tech Enterprise Innovation Institute. He's also the author of several books, including a brand new one right here from Paton Professional titled The 7 Lessons Management Tools for Success. Great book. Now, in the book, Cochran talks about the story of B&C Specialty Products, which is a fictional company, fictional Georgia-based manufacturer faced with some not so fictional problems, things that we see all the time in the real world: slipping sales, demoralized employees, declining customer satisfaction, poor overall quality, right? We've seen it a lot. The story of how they turned it around makes for an entertaining and a really enlightening read. It provides some practical advice for anyone who wants to see improvement in their own organizations. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about the 7 lessons and how they can be applied right now with the author Craig Cochran, who's joining us via Skype. Craig, are you there?
I sure am. Thanks for having me, Mike, Dirk.
Hey, Craig, how's it going, man?
Doing fantastic.
All right.
Good. Yes.
Like your wall back there. That's pretty interesting.
It keeps the evil spirits away.
Yes.
Very important. Very important to do that. Well, Craig, let's get started. Let's jump off here to the basics. What prompted you to write this book? How did it originate, and why did you decide to frame your story in the way that you did?
Well, I first got started down the road of being a quality speaker and writer by being an internal consultant. To the companies I worked for. And I think that's probably the most important role that a quality person can have, as an internal consultant, not solving problems for people, but enabling other people to solve problems, kind of a consultancy role. So that's how the story is framed: a consultant going into a business and, teaching them how to fish, so to speak, helping them solve their own problems. And I just wanted other people to see how the process works, being a consultant and providing that type of guidance.
And that's exactly how, again, when the readers out there, the viewers out there read the book, they'll see that it's framed in that you have a consultant that goes into B&C and begins to help them unspool some of these problems that they're having. And of course, according to the title, you present it through these 7 lessons. Can you quickly review what those 7 lessons are for us?
Sure, sure. They're very simple concepts. The 7 lessons are neglecting strategy, ignoring your true cost, managing in silos, treating customer complaints as insignificant, ineffective problem solving, hiring the wrong people, and not thanking your own employees.
Now those are great. I mean, those are great practical lessons. Those 7 would help any company, I think, who is having problems cover a lot of their situations and help them improve. But my question to you is, why those 7? Why not things like, I don't know, error reduction or new product development? Why did you pick those 7 as the key 7 that you feel are the answers to help these companies improve?
Well, they struck me as being the most universal and widely applicable lessons that apply to any business, manufacturing, service, anybody. And they're also fairly easy for a so-called consultant, whether they're internal or external, to actually facilitate progress against. So simple things, easy to forget, but also easy to put practices and processes in place that lead to improvement in these areas. A quick bang for the buck, so to speak.
Right, and that's it's great you say that, because that's what a lot of us and a lot of the folks out there are looking for. I mean, we need these quick solutions to problems. Obviously, a lot of these problem situations need to be, again, unspooled and looked at, and there needs to be process that being put into place. But the results need to happen real quick. In the case of B&C, in the story that you put forth, JT, I think JT was the name of the owner, was saying to the author at the beginning, or saying to the narrator at the beginning, hey, we're going to be out of business in a year. We need to improve right now. So that really is kind of, I think, how you approach it was getting in, rolling up your sleeves, and being able to do it right away, right?
Exactly. That's right. And these basic lessons will provide, a real quick improvement. I mean, just one of them, for instance, ineffective problem solving. Having a problem solving method in place, people understanding how it works, people not being afraid to use it, and employees at all levels of the organization applying it. I mean, just that one thing alone produces such incredible improvements.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because that's a good point, and that actually ties in, I think, as well with the idea of silos, because many times in organizations, even smaller organizations, from the book, again, B&C is not a huge organization, but different parts of the company do things in different ways, and how important is it that again, everybody gets on the same page and immediately begins to implement things, talk the same language in terms of quality improvement?
Well, you bring up a good point. The fictional company, B&C Specialty Products, is not a big place. But I think if you get more than 3 people in a room and call it a company or organization, you're going to naturally start getting silos, right? I mean, just people have different skills, different activities, and just, being smart folks, you focus on what you have to do, your own responsibilities and your own processes, and just that naturally leads to some isolation from everybody else. So if you're really working with anybody other than yourself, there's the strong chance there's going to be some siloing happening. Mm-hmm. So you have to continually, fight against that and set up a communication processes that discourage that type of separation.
Absolutely, very common thing that we see. Now, I won't ask you to name names, but I'm sure you've seen your share of B&C specialty sales in your career. What would you say for organizations like this? What is the single biggest obstacle to getting started on the road to quality improvement?
I would say from a consultancy standpoint, because that's the storyteller in this book, is the consultant that goes in and tries to make change happen. And that's, if you're an internal consultant to a company, the obstacle is you're part of them. You're just an idiot who's like everybody else in the company. And that's why there are so many external consultants out there, is because, if you're from outside the company and have a briefcase and a plane ticket, you must be brilliant, right? So that's probably the single biggest obstacle from a consultancy standpoint. Just from a general standpoint, it's fear of change, fear of doing something different. And change is not always good. So I think it's being afraid of change, and the change agents not managing it, not telling people, here's what we're doing, and here's exactly why we're doing it. Here's why we have to do it, and here's what you're going to personally get out of it, and short term and long term, and here's what the organization will ultimately get out of it. So fear of change, which comes from not understanding the change, coming from the leaders not really talking about it in an effective way.
Hey, Craig, you know, in your book, you basically your example, your fictional example was a manufacturing company. Is there any difference in how these lessons are applied in, let's say, a service-oriented company or more of a transactional environment?
Absolutely not. And that's one of the reasons I like these 7 lessons so much, is they are so applicable and universal to anything. I mean, lesson number 2, ignoring your true costs. I go to service companies all the time that don't really understand, you know, what it takes, how much money it takes to do a repair. They're doing repairs every day, but they have no idea what it's really costing them. You know, so every one of these is applicable to any kind of organization, service, governmental, military, manufacturing, really any organization that's doing work. These are applicable.
Yeah, Craig, I want to touch on something you mentioned a few moments ago, because it's a pet, I don't want to say it's a pet peeve of mine, but I guess it's an interest of mine, is this idea of fearing change. And it seems like it's an endemic psychological thing with most people, that they just don't want to change, even though, you know, a consultant like yourself can come in and you are qualified and people trust you, yet you say, hey, I've seen this work a zillion times, we've got to do it this way, we've got to change, and immediately there's that resistance, and sometimes it's overt, sometimes it's subtle, but it's always there. What's your perspective on that? I'm interested to hear, why do you think that people are so resistant to change?
Well, I think routine is very comfortable. Even a flawed process is a process that you're familiar with and comfortable with. You know, there's lots of things that I do day to day that I know that are, you know, not as good as they could be, but I understand them and I'm comfortable with them, so I just prefer to kind of keep on chugging. And I think that's the way most people are, you know, faced with what I'm doing now versus some unknown in the future. I kind of prefer just doing what I'm doing now. Even though there's a promise to be better, that there's a promise for, you know, improvement and great benefits or whatever, hey, I've got a reality that I understand and a future state that I don't really understand. So I don't like uncertainty, so I'm going to put up every obstacle I can to prevent the change from happening. And that's where the problem is. People just don't people don't communicate the change and don't really explain the background, the rationale, and the real need to do something different than what we're doing now. Because change is always going to be uncomfortable. Even change that leads to terrific improvement, right this second, it's real uncomfortable. So I have to understand why it's necessary and what I'm going to get out of it.
Well, that's one thing I really liked about your book, is the fact that I think you make that really approachable, that you take the idea of change, and you read this book, and I encourage people out there to read the book. You read the book and you get a very welcoming story out of it, that you can say, well, we can get through it.
Right.
Because you read about B&C and you say, gosh, man, they're having some problems, and maybe my organization's having some problems too, but they got through it, and they got through it by being able to embrace the change and doing that. So it's a good book. I'm sure you had a fun time writing it as well. We had a fun time reading it here.
Thank you so much. And none of it's hypothetical. All of this is real stuff that I've personally led at organizations and helped facilitate. So it's set in a fictional context, of course, but the actual scenarios that are described are all real. It's all happened multiple times. So even though it's a fictional thing, it really is a true roadmap that somebody could use tomorrow to drive significant change.
Well, that's great. Well, Craig, thanks again for joining us. Again, the name of the book, The 7 Lessons Management Tools for Success, published by Paton Professional. And again, story link just below our player page right there. You can go out and you can order it for yourself and check it out. Really good book. Craig, thanks for joining us. We had a great time, and we'll be chatting with you soon again.
Excellent.
Okay, thanks, Craig.
Have a nice weekend.
You too, man. Talk to you later.
All right.
Good stuff.
Good book. And by the way, for anybody who's if you've never read any of Craig Cochran's stories. Actually, if you go on our website and you just, in the search box in the upper right, type in Craig Cochran, you'll see a number of things that he's written for us. He's a good writer, very interesting, very kind of compelling, really sucks you into the story.
Yeah.
So,
and this
book is no different.
Yeah, great.
Good stuff. All right. So when I say plastic building blocks, what do you think of?
Legos.
Brilliant. I'm glad you didn't say Duplo, because that would have totally blown the story. So that's right. So obviously, Lego comes to mind anytime you say plastic blocks, because I don't care how old you are, You know Lego, the brand is practically synonymous with brightly covered plastic building blocks, and I bet you would be hard-pressed to name other brands that are out there. So to say Lego dominates that market is somewhat an understatement. However, probably not a lot of people know that Lego almost went bankrupt in 2003. I didn't know that until I read this story. Well, believe it or not, it happened because of innovation. Innovation. Why would, I mean, that seems completely backwards. Why could innovation almost sink a company? Well, it turns out in 2000, Lego went on an innovation binge. Part of this was in response to dwindling sales, cheaper products, similar product coming out of China and so forth, and so they felt they needed to do something. So they went on an innovation binge, and among other things, they added on Lego branded electronics, amusement parks, you've probably seen them, Legoland, interactive video games, jewelry, education centers, and of course, Harry Potter and Star Wars themed Lego kits. Now, according to Wharton Practice Professor of Operations and Information Management, David Robertson, Lego CEO Kirk Christensen and his leadership team followed nearly every one of the major principles for launching innovation projects. In 2000, they found relatively competition-free markets where Lego could dominate. Their management sought the participation of a number of different people and departments from both inside and outside the firm. They hired a diverse creative staff. It tried to create new products that disrupted existing markets, listened to customer feedback, everything that was supposed to fuel innovation. I mean, they followed the innovation playbook to the T.
So what went wrong?
Well, strange you should ask that. There's a book on this, strangely enough. And in his forthcoming book, what's it called? Brick by Brick, How Lego Reinvented Its Innovation System and Conquered the Toy Industry, Robert points out that Lego's error is that innovation management and evaluation were not at the heart of their innovation strategy. The truth is, says Robertson, that you can't have unbridled innovation. If you do, as in Lego's case, it could lead you down the wrong road. A really wrong road in Lego's case. So as an example, they started their innovation blitz in 2000. By 2003, just three years later, they were almost out of cash. They had a $300 million loss in 2003 and were projecting a $400 million loss in 2004. So a $700 million projected loss in just 2 years. So they had to turn things down. So what they did is, under new leadership, Kirk Christensen stepped down and, as CEO, went to chairman of the board, I believe, and Jorgen Vig Knudstorp took the helm. What they did is they created a more organized structure for innovations. Management gave everyone, from the sales force to headquarters staff, the capability to create and suggest new avenues for growth, so innovation. They still encouraged it, but their ideas were put to the test. And the test was any innovation had to prove to be consistent with the company goal that Lego be recognized as the best company for family products. That's the goal. Innovate all you want, but we're going to test your innovation. We're going to run it through this litmus test. And if it can't meet that goal, then we're not going to shoot for that innovation. So innovate all you want, but it's going to be structured and it's going to be tested and measured. So, results.
Yep.
That was a few years ago. During the last 3 years, get this, Lego sales have gone up an average of 24% annually. Profits have grown 41%. And Robertson adds, the company now has about 10,000 employees and is the world's third largest manufacturer of play materials. Lego products can be found in more than 130 countries. So the lesson is, innovation is good, but it has to make sense. It has to further the company's goals. If it doesn't do that, you don't do it.
Well, it's just like any other silo. I mean, innovation becomes a silo in and of itself, along with other parts of the organization, and people that like to innovate in organizations like Lego can run amok. I mean, it can happen. We've seen it on the other side of the equation. We had a story about, I believe it was Kodak. No, was it about Kodak? I'm sorry, Kodak. We had a story about Kodak a few months ago where they didn't innovate enough.
And the flip side of the coin.
That's right. So it's a fine line, you know.
And you do have to have a culture of innovation,
right?
But it's just, It has to be
needs to
tempered.
be managed,
Yeah.
and it needs to be not a silo where you say, well, those guys, those engineers are just developing stuff, and they're going to do what they're going to do, and it's going to be great. You have to weave it into the rest of your organization. It's an important lesson to understand there.
So that was putting Lego under the microscope.
Yeah,
Watch
right.
this segue. So speaking of microscopes.
Hey, Tech Corner
Hey,
this
there
week.
you go.
Good job, Derek. You're on it, man.
Segue for anything. All right. Okay, so today's Tech Corner. You know, we do bring a fair amount of equipment onto the show.
Sure.
Every other week or so we have something on. And a lot of the equipment, frankly, is fairly pricey. It's very high-end equipment. We've had things on from Brunson and OGP. Olympus had a beautiful video scope on not too long ago. But these things can run into the thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. So I love it when we run across an inspection tool that is something that anybody can use, and it's very useful, and that's what we're going to look at today.
And very affordable.
And very affordable. So what I'm holding in my hand here, actually, let's switch over to the gauge cam. This is the micro. Actually, let me get the name right here. This is from Avon Incorporated, and this is the MightyScope 5M digital microscope. This is a 10x to 200x power scope with a built-in ring light. We can see that there, blind you with the camera there. With a built-in ring light. Now that 200x, part of that is digital zoom. On my computer, optical zoom only, I'm getting about 40x optical zoom maximum, which is great for any kind of close inspection. So I'll go back to our main cam here. Nice thing about it, it's a USB cord, ties into your computer via USB, and I can do a whole variety of things with this. I just want to show you a couple things. First of all, I want to do a little close-up. This is at maximum magnification, and let me get my software up here. Okay, so built-in ring light. I'm going to put this like right dead on the top of, this is actually the box that it came in, and let me focus this. And you can see I'm looking at the actual dot pattern, and you can see it there. That is the dot pattern for the printing. That's your CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, black dots that you would see if you look at anything really close. You can see very crisp, very well lit.
Excellent optics.
And yeah, really good optics. I'm going to look at my keyboard here. You have a working distance of maybe about 8 inches. And you can see every, if I hold this steady, you can see every speck of dust on this.
Clean your keyboard, Dirk.
Man, no kidding. I got to stop eating over it.
I was going to say.
I think I see breadcrumbs in there. And you can see it's actually very clear, and this is a working distance of about 8 inches. So really a useful tool for any kind of inspection, like circuit board inspection, mechanical inspection, or even if you just need to look at something and get inside an awkward space. This has got about a 6-foot USB cord. You can just run your hand down into something.
Yep.
But it's more than just a visual inspection tool. It also works as a measurement tool. And that's what I want to show you right now. So I'm going to come back to our gauge cam here, and let's focus. And I've got two things here. I've got a ruler, a tape measure actually, and a dime. And the reason for the ruler is in order to do measurement, I need to, first of all, calibrate. So I'm going to click on my measurement tool up here. I'm going to tell it to calibrate. And basically what I have to do in order to calibrate is tell it, give it a reference. And I have a choice of how many reference distances I can choose. I'm going to choose 5 millimeters. And I'm going to measure out 5 millimeters. Actually, I can go more on this. I think I'll do 10 millimeters. Yeah. I'm going to measure 10 millimeters, and that's going to give me my reference value. So I'm going to select a line tool here. There we go. Select a line tool, and I'm going to measure, that's 10 millimeters, 1 centimeter. And release, that's all it takes to calibrate it. Obviously, you would probably use something better than a tape measure. You might want to use a steel rule or a gauge block, something that had a known accuracy. But this is close enough for what we're doing here. And now I can actually go into measure mode. If I go back and actually measure that distance again, I can see in my length it's showing me 9.99 millimeters. But let's get rid of that. Let's take the tape measure out of the picture. Put everything back on the floor here. And now we've got our dime. Let me center the dime. I'm going to drop that dime. Okay, all right, focus that a little bit more. By the way, look at that. You can see every scratch on that thing.
Sure can.
It's really great. So go back into measurement mode. Number of measurements I can do. I can measure, I can take angle measurements, circle, ellipse, line, rectangle, triangle, and a 3-dot radius measurement. I'll show you in just, matter of fact, let me show you that one right now. 3-dot radius. If I move this out of the way, take 3 dots, so that's our first one. We stretch it to the second one and stretch it to the third one. And it shows me down here where you can just barely see it. It shows me that I have a radius of, I believe that says 8.4, 8.4, which would be a diameter of 16.8. Turns out a dime actually has a diameter of, I believe, 17.4 millimeters. So pretty close, given that I didn't really calibrate this all that well. Angle, as I mentioned, angle measurements, line measurement. Let's do a line measurement really quick here. So I measured a circle. Let's measure a line. How long is his neck there? And we get a measurement, a length of 6.6 millimeters. Now that I've taken my measurements, I can say, okay, let's take a snapshot of it, and I can save it, and now I can get out of there. And if you look along the bottom, Daniel, if you can kill that lower third there so we can see the bottom. There we go. Along the bottom, you can see saved images. At any point, I can just bring up an image I want. Here's another dime that I took. Here's the dot pattern that we took earlier. So you can save images, annotated images, as well as videos as well. So if you're taking something that has movement that you need to capture, you can record an AVI with it. So get this, $250.
Wow.
I mean, it's really an inexpensive, really useful measurement tool that operates off the USB port on your laptop.
That's great.
So yeah, so it's great. So this was the, let me grab the box here.
Yeah.
This is the Mighty Scope, the Mighty Scope 5M digital microscope from Avon Incorporated.
That's right. Great tool.
Yeah, great tool.
We love those things.
$250.
I know,
mean,
gosh,
it's a piece of cake. Kind of a no-brainer, really, for an inspection tool.
Sure, and we love those that kind of equipment. So if you have other products similar to this or other test and measurement equipment that you want us to demo on the show, just let us know at qdl@qualitydigest.com, and we'll get it on the show for you.
Yep.
All right. Well, that is our show for this week, for July 27th. Thank you all for joining us. Next week, couple of interesting things on here. But first of all, we've got a couple of statistical articles. All of you out there love stats. We have two of the leading statisticians working in the world today. Of course, Donald Wheeler, Dr. Donald Wheeler.
Obviously.
He'll have an article next week. And Davis Balistracci, one of our favorites, is going to have an article as well on stats. Not only that, next week we're also going to ask some dumb questions.
No such thing as dumb questions.
There are only dumb people.
That's right.
And there are two of them right here. But in any event, join us next week. We're going to have some great content on QDD, and we'll be of course, featuring a lot of that on QDL.
That's right. Next week is the last week in
this show, the studio.
In this studio. Then we're going to move to our new Quality Digest World Headquarters.
That's right.
And instead of being next to the railroad tracks, we'll be next to airplanes.
The airport. Well, we're transportational, so
yeah, that's right.
Look out for that. All right. Well, that's our show. Thanks all of you for joining us, and we want you to have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
So long.
Bye.
Thank you.